Okay, so we are Cadalog. We develop some plugins for SketchUp, basically. We had a CPU-based ray tracing plugin called SU Podium, and also a content library for SketchUp called Podium Browser. And all these things were basically geared towards still visualization. Customers eventually started asking for, camera fly-through animation capabilities, basically. So our answer was a plugin called Podium Walker. And I'm just going to start with a series of images basically to sort of show why Podium Walker wasn't quite the success we hoped it would be, build the case for Iray, and show how it was able to help us. This is an image from SU Podium, which was, as I said, the original CPU-based ray trace. And that's pretty indicative of the sort of images that our customers are typically doing. Architectural visualization, a lot of interior designers are using it. And that's pretty typical of the visual quality. And then this next slide is Podium Walker. So it's kind of an egregious example. The step down in quality is pretty jarring. There's almost no indirect lighting. The light fixtures are harsh. Tons of anti-aliasing issues. So this was a pretty big disappointment. We didn't get great adoption, and so we started looking into options. That's where Iray comes in. So if I flip to the final version in ProWalker GPU rendered with Iray, this is actually an interactive mode. So compared to that Podium Walker image, it's just an enormous, huge step forward. So this is the direction we went. Another example, this is SU Podium, exterior visualization, nice lighting, everything looks pretty good. Same model in Podium Walker, and just flat lighting. We're losing detail in the shadows. The edges aren't being resolved. So it's pretty clear Podium Walker wasn't cutting it, wasn't living up to expectations. And then we go back to Iray. This one's rendered in photoreal mode. And at this point, we're pretty much at parity with that original Podium image. There's not much noticeable difference in visual quality there. So we're feeling pretty good for still visualization. And this was just an early animation test, and I think this is when we started to realize that, Iray is going to be a pretty capable render engine for not only for stills, but also for animation. Just way better light distribution compared to that Podium Walker image. Shadows are nicer, there's no anti-aliasing issues. We started to think we could also position this as sort of a companion product to SU Podium, offering an option, a GPU-based visualization option instead of just, because our original plugin was CPU only. Essentially, we started thinking we could sell ProWalker as an add-on to Podium. So we wanted the integration between the two to be seamless, essentially, and basically have a unified interface for lighting and materials. They set all their settings in Podium like they always have, but then they have an option to render in ProWalker GPU if they have, an NVIDIA graphics card that can support it and get an image faster. So one more comparison, nice attic conversion image. That's SU Podium. And then the ProWalker GPU rendered in Iray photoreal mode. I chose this example because something that we have never implemented in SU Podium is image-based lighting in HDRI. And this one is lit by HDRI, which is sort of bringing in those warm, almost rosy tones. Compared to the original in SU Podium, it's a little bit flatter. We're getting some nice warm reddish colors late afternoon. This one's more pronounced, full daylight, HDRI. And then we use a late evening sunset HDRI, and you get a completely different image. So this is something, we never had this kind of iterative interactivity. It's not full on like 51 VR with Unreal Engine, but it's just the ability to go into a menu, select a different background from a drop-down instead of like retooling your entire model for different lighting. There's no work required for the user going from this to this, other than picking a different background. So that was a big step forward for us too. So for development and integration, we integrated both photoreal and interactive mode and progressive rendering. The big challenge for us was basically making sure there were no major workflow differences between SU Podium to ProWalker. A user who's already set up their lights and materials in SU Podium can then just set up a camera path and render in ProWalker with no extra work. So Podium reads the SketchUp date and time basically for a physical sky simulation, so we integrated that, sent that to Iray, so users can animate shadows and show the passage of time. Lighting and material properties need to be translated faithfully, basically. The reason for this is that Podium Browser content library that I was talking about. So, you know, all of these items that I'm showing on screen, basically all this furniture, all these light fixtures are pre-made by us, and people buy a content license for it. And they've already got materials on them, basically, so they need to be able to download that into their scene and have it render correctly without any additional user intervention. You know, so these three light fixtures need to emit a comparable amount of light, whether you're rendering in Podium or doing an animation in ProWalker, basically. And actually, we still have a lot of work to do with materials. MDL is pretty sophisticated compared to what we've implemented. Basically, we're not even on a PBR workflow. It's diffuse reflection transparency for us. And that's pretty much all we did, was translated that over to Iray. So there's still a lot of development potential there. So hopefully we can put some more time into materials in the future. But back to the original goal, did we improve the animation capabilities? I think we definitely did. I'm just going to start a video here showing the original Podium Walker with all those same issues I showed you before, and then it's going to switch to same version in ProWalker GPU. It's Iray, photoreal mode, better details, better light, better color. Pretty much everything is better. So from a quality perspective, it's a huge step up. We're still looking at a lot of challenges for hardware, basically, and render times. You know, this is about 20 seconds long, which is something like 600 frames. So if you've got the hardware for it, maybe you can get that done in 20 hours. A lot of our users don't have access to like a machine with 5 1080 Ti's or something like that. So we're still working to make this accessible to people that are rendering on like a single GTX 1060 or something like that, you know, on a laptop. The ability to not only do single frames, but also animations. So how do we make it accessible to that user? We finally just integrated the denoise algorithm, which is pretty much like magic. It's made a huge difference already. In interactive mode, there's some flicker we've noticed at lower sample counts with lighting from frame to frame. So we're still working on that. I don't have a lot of insight into the development because I'm not a developer, but I think the next step we want to take is something cloud-based, essentially. So we're looking into Iray server, basically so people can configure everything on their home machine, and then upload basically a script or whatever to a cloud platform and offload the rendering to something like AWS. I don't know. We'll have to look into it. We're definitely open to suggestions there, because that's the biggest challenge for us at this point, is getting the render speeds faster, render times down. And that's sort of where we're going with ProWalker GPU. So thank you guys so much. A couple more images, and looking forward to seeing everybody else.